Welcome back. This is the Well I Am podcast, and I'm Kerry Miller. And sitting opposite me today is actually our first guest that we had, Mario van Biljon, I believe is the correct pronunciation.
Yeah, I suppose so. I believe so. There's some French descendants there, yeah.
Two reasons why you're back. One is you're very much a part of the brand, of the Well I Am brand, and one of the partners, and I think it's Sports RX. And the other thing is that after your podcast aired, so many other questions came through because you are very good at explaining to us, the casual man on the side, how these supplements, it was the creatines and the collagens worked, and we were talking about protein, etc., etc. And then the questions started coming up about the food we're eating now versus the food we were eating, and whether or not food can make us, our bodies, find a state of dis-ease or disease. And then someone started saying, can't you ask Mario about pH and your body? And I thought, instead of actually trying to find out from you and comment underneath, let's just get you back and talk about all of this now. Okay.
Cool, 100%.
So let's go straight into it. Food and the body's disease or dis-ease. What is going on? We've been eating food for literally generations. Why now is the food we're eating making us sick?
Yeah, so Kerry, so it's quite simple. Going back to the original podcast, I think I might have mentioned that the human body is composed of what we put in our mouth. Ultimately, our body is constructed out of the ingredients that we provided, and we provided by way of our food. And then if we look at the human body and the human genome, which has evolved over, controversially, maybe 4 million years, over those 3 or 4 million years, our body evolved on a diet which is commonly referred to as a hunter-gatherer diet or Paleolithic diet. And then really only in the last sort of 10,000 years, with the advent of animal husbandry and modern agriculture, where we started farming grains, etc., did our diets radically change. So,
may I ask you, for those of us who aren't, we maybe heard hunter-gatherer, we've heard the word paleo or Paleolithic. What exactly would someone who eating a paleo diet consume? Like, what would be on my plate?
Yeah, so Paleolithic diet, hunter-gatherer diet, is we would forage for roots, we'd eat vegetables, we'd eat seasonal berries, seasonal fruits, and then as hunters either catch fish or catch wild game. So we would move from season to season, migrate from area to area based upon the seasons as to where there's the most abundance in food.
So meat and veg,
so
basically.
meat and veg and roots, basically.
And what do you mean by roots?
Potato, what do you call it? A potato, a sweet potato, mudumbi,
okay.
bulbs, tumours, beetroot, etc. Onions, so wild tubers, I think you call them, and potatoes and sweet potatoes and those kind of things as we would have foraged for, and that's the diet that we would have evolved on. And as I say, with the advent of modern agriculture and animal husbandry, we started then less migrating, seasonal migrations around.
So we weren't getting our steps.
Yeah. So and then we would
steps.
sort of form civilizations in certain areas, and then we'd grow our food and grow the food that was easiest to grow, and breed the animals that were easiest to breed, whether it be beef, chickens, etc. So so our diets significantly changed in the last 10,000 years. Now, over a period of millions of years, 10,000 years is a relatively short period in the evolutionary scale for our bodies to have adjusted to this drastic change. And then even more so in the last 50 to 100 years, there's been an even greater radical change in the diets that we consume because of just modern day food processing techniques and fast foods, etc. So our diets have changed significantly in 5, 6, 7, 8 different ways. We could go over each one and briefly, and as a result, we're nowadays eating a lot more sugar than we would have eaten, a lot less fiber than we would have eaten, a lot more saturated fats than we would have eaten back then, a lot less omega-3 fats, a lot less micronutrients than we would have eaten back then, a lot more salt than we would have eaten back then.
Sure.
And so it goes on and on. And as a result,
so we're not doing well.
We're not doing well. Our modern day diet or Western diet is in many ways very contrasting to what our bodies were built on, our genomes were built on. And then we have, as a result, the advent of adult onset diabetes, heart disease. I think heart disease now kills 4 in 10 if we want to refer to ourselves as Westerners, people that follow a Western diet, strokes, cancer. So all of these things can many times, probably 9 times out of 10, be related directly back to our diet.
Okay, but and sorry to interrupt you, Mario, and I know that you're not a doctor per se, but how? How does me eating my burger and chips for lunch give me heart disease or diabetes? Like how?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll carry probably the easiest is go through them one by one. So let's take sugar, for example, or refined carbohydrates, okay?
So is sugar a refined carbohydrate?
Yeah.
Or,
so we get complex carbohydrates in their natural form. So if you eat a vegetable or potato, that's a complex carbohydrate made up predominantly of complex unrefined carbohydrates. As soon as we take the carbohydrate and either process it into a flour, take out the fiber and the husks of grains, we produce refined carbohydrates or sugars. And sugars taste nice, so food manufacturers like to want you to eat their foods. So we tend to fortify modern day foods with sugars to make them taste sweeter and taste nicer and get consumers to eat more of the product. So in the old days, when I say old days, on a Paleolithic hunter-gatherer diet, researchers indicate that we would have in 1 year, the average human would have eaten about 2 to 2.5 kilos of sugar in a year, and that would have come only from fruits, seasonal fruits, and then the odd occasional find of honey. So they find a beehive. So hunter and gatherers would have this evidence of them eating honey from time to time, and then so only that fruits.
So not on their rooibos at night.
Yeah. So it's only fruits and berries and honey. That would have been in our ancient diets. That would have been our total consumption of sugar. As I say, that would have equated, depending on where you were migrating that, but between 2 and 2.5 kilos of sugar a day.
And now?
Modern day diets currently, as of the last research done a few years back, the average Western diet, the average Westerner following a Western diet or like us, eats about 75 kilograms of sugar a year. So our bodies, our genomes evolved to consume 2 to 2.5 kilos a year. We're now eating 70
times more than that.
Yeah. So as a result, our pancreas can't cope up with that. So we oversecrete insulin. We then develop insulin resistance because it's just the body's being flooded with insulin that it shouldn't have. The cells, your cells develop insulin resistance, and then from insulin resistance, you start developing adult onset diabetes, stroke, various forms of cancer, or kidney disease, or as a result of an overconsumption of sugar. Not solely, but in many instances. So overconsumption of sugar leads to many of these ailments, particularly adult onset diabetes, which starts with insulin resistance. Yeah.
Is something like that, and again, I know you're not a doctor, so this is your opinion, is something like that reversible with diet change, or once you've got adult onset diabetes, that's it? Heart disease, that's it?
So the nice thing about adult onset diabetes, which type 2 diabetes, it's not hereditary, and it is largely almost completely reversible versus hereditary diabetes, which is a very few people have, type 1 diabetes, which is hereditary. Most people today that have diabetes, of which there's tens of millions around the world, or if they don't have diabetes, they're on their way to getting diabetes. They already, so if we had to go and test the average population now in the Western world, you'd probably find 30-40% of people show some form of insulin resistance, and they're on their way to getting adult onset diabetes. And that is 100% reversible by way of a change in the diet. So if we revert back to the way we should be eating, insulin resistance quickly improves. And we can certainly reverse that completely. And even someone that's become insulin dependent and is got type 2, even if provided they're not, it's not hereditary. If it's adult onset diabetes, that can be reversed, and they can get to a stage where they completely remove the insulin supplementation and they get back to normal again. So certainly by changing the diet, we can revert back to a normal insulin health.
You did just say, and the sentence was, it can be reversed if we go back to how we should be eating.
Or at least improved. If we go from 75 kilograms of sugar a year to 10 or 15, you're still going to significantly improve your health.
So that's what I was going to say. It's 2024, and in every channel you watch, someone's giving the idea of what's perfect. Whether you go to a CrossFit gym or a Pilates or a yoga or somewhere, someone's telling you how you should be eating, and often they're not the same. Is it a case of everybody is different, and actually you should be vegan and you should be vegetarian, or you should be like paleo, or like, how does one even know? Because for someone who thinks vegetarianism is the way forward, the Paleolithic diet's not going to work. So if for someone who thinks you should be Paleolithic and they go into a community that says, no, we must be vegan to be healthy, it's not going to fly. So where do we find our information?
So I'm either the right or the wrong person to be talking to about that, depending on which side of the table you sit. I just state the facts. And the reality is, so where this problem arises with what you're discussing is that today there's too many experts because of social media. In the old days, to be an expert, you would have had to get some kind of coverage by way of print media, so you had to have credibility. You're not going to get into a magazine without some kind of credibility. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, everyone
have a TikTok account.
Everyone has got a TikTok, and they all got an opinion, and there's absolutely a load of hogwash out there. So I only can tell you the facts. So the facts are that the human genome evolved over 3 million years on a Paleolithic diet, which was a hunter-gatherer diet, which included meat, vegetables, etc. So if you want to be a vegan, by all means. If you want to be a carnivore, by all means, but it's very clear as to how our genome evolved. There's no doubt about that. We know exactly how it evolved, on what ratio of carbohydrates to what ratio of fats to what ratio of proteins. We know what sources those came from. So that's why our teeth developed, why we don't have herbivore teeth and we don't have carnivore teeth. We've got omnivore teeth, and that's why we don't have a digestive tract that's a carnivore's digestive tract, and we don't have a digestive tract that's like a cow, a herbivore. Our digestive tract is somewhere in between both, because it needs to accommodate an omnivorous diet, and that's how we evolved. So, I can only speak facts, not opinion on, and the facts are, it's not difficult to go back to a Paleolithic style diet.
Did the paleos, did they like have a little bit of booze? Come on.
So there's
tell me the facts.
Not really, but there was fermented foods back in those days. There certainly was access to fermented foods, and and there was a little bit of the traces of alcohol in the diet, but not that was incidental.
Enough.
Incidental.
You've said enough. There was traces.
So funny that you talk about alcohol. I'm not anti people drinking alcohol. I choose not to drink alcohol, and people ask me why, and it's very simple. Number one, it tastes like shit.
Okay.
Unless you train your taste buds to like it, like you have.
Yes, I've trained hard.
Number two, it alters your cognitive function.
Yeah, there's not any positives really.
And number three, ethanol, which is what alcohol is a cytotoxin. I mean, if I have a living cell, and I put some alcohol swab over it, I kill it instantly. So it makes no rational or logical sense to consume alcohol. But anyway, going back to the hunters and gatherers, if they ate any alcohol, it was by way of fermented foods or whatever, incidentally, not for pleasure. No,
they were not having a drawl together.
Yeah. So that's the sugar. So sugar as a result.
Of course.
Going back to hunter, you're asking me, how does our diets nowadays impact upon like modern day ailments? Adult onset diabetes is one of the fastest growing health ailments in the world, and as a result of us going from 2 grams of sugar a year, to 75 grams of sugar a year. If I take
kilograms or grams,
75 kilograms. Yeah. So I mean, we're just not designed to consume that amount of sugar, and if we do, we're going to get insulin resistance and diabetes, and then a host of other ailments that relate to diabetes.
The blood, is it the blood type diet or what is your take on that? Because I've heard people be like, I'm O positive, so I can't be vegetarian, or I'm an A something, so I can't eat meat. Have you done any research into the blood type diet? What is your take on it?
Yeah, I'd rather not say too much on it, because I haven't done enough research on it, because I'm not a huge believer in it.
Okay.
And if I don't believe in something, if it doesn't make rational sense, and I don't spend too much time investigating it, but certainly I do know that my ancestor from 2 million years ago didn't know what blood type he was, and so it's it may be that certain blood types originated in certain areas of the world over
that
millions of years. So there may be some science in that regard, in that, I grew up in the fertile valleys of the Middle East, etc., and genetically and hereditary, like
Mediterranean style diet,
and my blood type sort of was the prevalent blood type on that sort of diet, and but overall, I think that overcomplicates things. I think the long story short is we need to cut sugar down in our diet. Adding on to the sugar, you asked me as well, so let's take heart disease and stroke and high cholesterol and colorectal cancer as an example. So going back to the sugars, we're overeating sugars and we're overeating in refined carbohydrates. So when we refine a carbohydrate, we're taking a grain, processing it, producing a flour, removing the husk, removing the fiber. So modern day diets are very devoid. While we're eating too much sugar, we're very devoid in fiber. So a hunter-gatherer would have, through foraging and picking fruits and vegetables,
eating the animal,
and eating the whole,
the
whole
potato, not just potato flour.
Exactly, not just the flour. Would have researchers, guys that study this kind of stuff, indicate that our hunter-gatherer diets would have consumed about 40 to 50 grams of fiber a day.
Sure.
The average Western diet nowadays contains about 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day. So now bear in mind fiber, of which there's two types, soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber dissolves in water and it sort of adds volume to your stool and helps with easy transit and no constipation, etc. Blah blah blah. And then the roughage, the non-digestible, non-soluble fiber, that sort of adds bulk, and we can view it as, in a simplistic terms, as scrubbing out your colon.
So you need both.
So it scrubs out the carcinogens and helps clean out your colon. So carcinogenic substances that would naturally be scrubbed clean from the colon are now not being scrubbed clean from the colon and sitting there in your colon, etc. And as a result, colon cancer has become, if you go back.
Oh, so it's really just like leaving dirt in your bin,
exactly.
and then you
and
get maggots, and the maggots is cancer.
Not having means to scrub it out. So if we go back to diets from a million years ago and had a look at how many people had colon cancer, it would have been almost non-existent back then, and colon cancer is one of the more common cancers nowadays. So there's another example, just not enough fiber in our diet.
And just, if I can just run back to the sugar quickly, when we think sugar, and you mentioned honey, and then we know sugar as in sugar and then fruits. But there's so many other things that are sugar that we aren't even sure about. And earlier today, actually, we were speaking about non-nutritive sweeteners. And then you get all the oses, the dextrose, sucrose, all of these sugars, and all of them contribute to this. Or are they, is a honey okay?
Honey in moderation is okay, because honey has got some health attributes to it other than just the fact that it's a sweetening agent. So if I had to use a sweetener or a refined sugar, my preference would be honey, but not to overconsume it, because if you overconsume honey, you're still going to have the same impact on your pancreas as normal sugar. But there's some health attributes to honey, so certainly and fruits as well. So fruits and honey would be, going back to the Paleolithic diet, that's just what I would get my sugars ideally from. So basically, how do we know there's dextrose and sucrose and fructose and different sugars? Basically, anything that's sweet to taste, unless it's an artificial sweetener, will be a sugar. So dextrose, which is glucose, is sweet to taste. Fructose is sweet to taste. Sucrose, which is dextrose and fructose combined. So basically your foods that you consume that are sweet, they've either been sweetened from sugars, or if they haven't been sweetened from sugars, then they've been sweetened by an artificial sweetener, whether it be sucrose, stevia, aspartame, etc. Personally, I'd rather be eating artificial sweetener. I've got a sweet tooth, if I'm brutally honest.
Aspartame, you would have.
Aspartame or sucrose. That's
but you hear that this is like the devil. You hear about aspartame, then it's got the star next to it and underneath, and it tells you that it might cause basically an upset stomach. So I was like, whoa, rather just go with your sugar than this that's been created in a lab. Now you seem to be saying differently.
Ideally, if you had a choice of the optimal diet would have neither.
Okay.
But if you have to have choose the worst devil of the two, then certainly artificial sweeteners would be, in my opinion, far safer.
Would it not still peak and spike the sugars? Because my parents they'll go through so much. Is it the Coke Light or whatever that thing is? And I look at what's in this thing, and I'm like, that doesn't seem better than Coke. In fact, that the chemicals that have been used to create this fake sweetener, I don't know enough about it, so I'm asking you.
So bear in mind, and I don't want the sugar industry to come down on me, but bear in mind that a lot of the propaganda which has been propagated or research funded, not maybe recently, but many years ago, 70s, 80s, anti-aspartame, etc., was funded by persons with ulterior motives, because you have a sugar industry that wants to protect itself. So if I'm saying to you, Kerry, I'd rather you use my product sugar than the artificial sweetener. Many of these companies now produce artificial sweeteners themselves,
Okay.
so they don't say
It's
too
like
much.
the smoking vaping situation in the sugar
but in
world.
the early, so let's take aspartame as an example. Simple fact of the matter is aspartame is made up of 2 amino acids, phenylalanine and aspartic acid, 2 naturally occurring amino acids that are bonded together. That bonding of those 2 amino acids together forms a substance which we call aspartame, which is roughly 300 times sweeter than sugar. So to taste, it's a very sweet molecule. I'm now 52 years old. Since the age of 18, I've only consumed artificial sweeteners in copious amounts because I have a sweet tooth. So whether it be aspartame or sucralose, I must if I have a cup of coffee, I'll put 3 sticks in.
Stop it.
So
it's not very Paleolithic.
So
of you.
when I have 4 cups of coffee a day or 5 cups of coffee a day, that's 15 aspartame sticks or whatever a day. And if I drink Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or whatever it is, I only drink the diet versions or Sprite Zero. So I don't think there's anyone that's consumed more aspartame or sucralose in the last 30 years than myself.
And you seem okay.
There is a negative, and I'll be open and honest about that, is that the more sweet food we consume, the more we train our taste buds to have a craving for sweet foods. And the ideal approach would be for us not to crave sweetness.
Yes.
So what I'm doing is I'm training myself to want more sweet stuff. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So if I didn't have all these artificial sweeteners, I probably wouldn't have a sweet tooth. You know what I'm saying? So if I was giving someone the ultimate diet, I'd say, like, train yourself not to want sweet stuff and not to want fatty stuff. Fats and the wrong fats and the wrong and sugars are what make modern day processed foods taste so nice, or we've programmed ourselves to like that taste, and they cause the most harm. So I would want a person not to crave sweet food and not to crave fatty foods, ideally, and that takes eating a certain way. When I add artificial sweeteners to my foods or drinks, and I eat artificially sweetened products, I'm training my taste buds to enjoy the taste of sweet food. So that's the negative.
And your take on like a date, for example. I'm not trying to ask you out. I mean, like actually the
dates.
Huh?
I like dates. Yeah, dates. Dates are excellent. Dates are again, they're high in sugar, so I wouldn't be eating too many of the dates. But in terms of they're rich in fiber, there's certain micronutrients that they're high in. So dates, but I wouldn't overeat. Honey and dates and fruit, I would eat because they're healthy, but not overeaten. You know what I'm saying? So the bulk of the diet, our bulk of our diet should be lean meats and vegetables and fibrous vegetables.
Lean meats meaning a meat that the fat's been cut off, or lean meats meaning ostrich, kudu, other game meats, or do you mean
a bit of both, but more the second thing that you're saying. So we've talked about we overeat now. Instead of eating 2 kilos of sugar, we're eating 75 kilos of sugar.
I think also just overeat in general.
We
overeat.
Yeah, well, when I say overeat, we overeat in calories. So you can eat a hell of a lot of food in volume, but not necessarily a lot of calories. So now I'll give you an example. If I take a heaped teaspoon of sugar and I've got 4 or 5 grams of sugar there, and I put 2 of those into my cup of coffee, I've now got, let's say I'm rounding that off to 10 grams of sugar. To eat 10 grams of carbs, 10 grams of sugar has got 40 calories. To get same 40 calories from a vegetable, I might have to eat like half a plate of vegetables to get 10 grams of carbohydrates and the same amount of calories. So I can eat a lot of vegetables or salads, for example, with very few grams of carbohydrates, which means very few calories.
Yeah.
So we overeating,
so calories
but
they're
not
coming from those dressings.
we're not necessarily overeating in volume of food, but we're overeating in calories because we're not eating enough fibrous foods, which are bulky. We're overeating in sugar, which is condensed refined sugars, and then when it comes to fats, we're overeating in saturated fats, and fats have got 9 calories per gram. So if we go back to our Paleolithic diets, firstly, we ate a lot less fats. And then secondly, the kinds of fats that we ate were a lot more healthful than the fats that we eat now. So nowadays we eat predominantly farmed meat. Let's say cows that are maybe grain-fed, for example. So, what we call a triple A grade piece of beef is typically marbled with fat, intramuscular fat, and that fat is quite saturated. Now, if we go back and we compare that to a buck that we might have hunted tens of thousands of years ago, and we look at the fat that's firstly the cow is 25 to 30% fat by body weight. a wild game is maybe around 10%, 5 to 10% body fat, so it's got a lot less fat. If I then dissect a piece of steak from a buck, a wild buck versus a cow, like I say, the cow is maybe is full of marbled saturated fats, and then the game, on the other hand, is the fats that are present, which are a lot less, are made up significantly of our essential fats, our polyunsaturated fats,
So that's what I was going to
omega-3s.
say. Can you explain because on the back of your packets, they've got saturated and unsaturated fats. What does that mean?
So we evolved on a diet that comprised mainly unsaturated fats.
So what saturated meaning?
Okay, saturated is a chemical. I don't want to try and see how I can put this across, not too technical way. A fat molecule is made up of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygen molecules. So the carbon chain is the backbone of a fat molecule. So you've got a carbon bonded to another carbon, to another carbon, to another carbon.
Vertebra.
So the vertebra is your carbon molecules. And then off each carbon, there's a hydrogen atom bonded to it. So if I draw
one.
So one at the top, one at the bottom. So you've got a carbon to a carbon to a carbon to a carbon.
And then hydrogen
above the hydrogen above and a hydrogen below. And then you go to the next carbon, hydrogen above, hydrogen below. Then you go to the next carbon. If there's no hydrogen on a carbon, then what's happened is you get what's called a double bond between the two carbons.
Yeah.
And then in the space where hydrogen should be, there's nothing.
And
so that's now monounsaturated. In other words, it's not saturated with hydrogen.
Oh, so one
there's
of
a
those
singular missing hydrogen in the chain
saturation.
Means monounsaturated.
What?
If there's many missing hydrogens along the chain,
polyunsaturated.
it's polyunsaturated.
What is even happening? Hallelujah. That's amazing.
And so what happens now, if you imagine a chain fully saturated with hydrogen ions, it's a saturated fat.
And that means there's
It's
hydrogen.
It's less flexible because now the fat chain can't bend. If I'm missing a hydrogen,
then there's a gap.
it's a gap, and it starts bending
one of
that way.
buses
And
that
there's
can
another
move.
one there, then it bends that way. So the more unsaturated the fatty acid chain, the fat chain, the more the shape the molecule, the fat can take. So polyunsaturated fats.
Do you want it to take
yes,
shape?
you want it to have
or
a shape
not?
because the human body is made up of structural that have functional shape to them.
So is a polyunsaturated better
Is the
than a
best.
mono?
So-
Okay, so
so
polyunsaturated fat is what we're looking
Is
for.
what we're looking for, yeah. So your
Monounsaturated.
omega-3s and your omega-6s are
So that's like
polyunsaturated.
salmons and things like that.
Salmon, seed oils to a degree. So you get the two main types of polyunsaturated fats are omega-3s and omega-6s. We want omega-3s and omega-6s, but not too much omega-6. Okay? This gets very, very complicated.
No, we're here for this. We are so invested. Don't stop now.
Saturated fats in the old our Paleolithic diet were very low. We consume very low. So now we're eating a lot of saturated fats. Saturated fats have very little structural function in the body
they
because
can't move 'cause
they've
they're
got no
all
shape.
attached.
So they're like, what would the word? They're dead fats. Oh yeah,
They're rigid.
They're rigid. There's no
Yeah.
structure to them. They give very little structural component function in the
It's
body.
like eating little Legos.
Yeah. So the more unsaturated, the more sort of they're pliable, and the body can use them for various structural mechanisms in the body. A polyunsaturated fat obviously has got the most shape, and we've got your omega-3s and your omega-6s. Monounsaturated, oleic acid, omega-9. We find it in olive oil.
So where would you find omega-3?
Omega-3s would be predominantly found in fish, wild game,
Okay.
seeds and nuts to a degree, but some seeds more than others. Flaxseed is high in omega-3,
And
hemp seed is high in omega-3. Omega-6 is very common, and this is the unfortunate thing. Omega-6 is very, very common in the seed oils that we consume the most of nowadays, which not necessarily in our Paleolithic diets, but modern day we cook in sunflower or canola oil. Sunflower and canola oil are high in omega-6. They're polyunsaturated, which sounds nice, but they're high in omega-6s, and they're throwing our omega-3 to 6 ratio out. So we evolved on a diet where a Paleolithic diet had around a ratio of 1 to 2 omega-3s to omega-6s. Okay, modern day diets are reversed the other way around, and we probably have 6 or 7 omega-6s to 1 omega-3 in our diet. So we're eating too many because of the seed diet, because of the seed-based cooking oils that we're using. I'm talking canola and sunflower. We're overeating in omega-6s. So whilst we're eating a reasonable amount of polyunsaturated fats, we're not getting enough omega-3s. We're getting too much omega-6s. Omega-6s, an overconsumption of omega-6s is pro-inflammatory in the body.
Okay.
So pro-inflammatory means that it contributes to all sorts of inflammatory
the
diseases.
disease.
Okay. So we want to limit the amount of omega-6s we have because there's a lot of them around, and we need to try and eat more omega-3s and less omega-6s and less saturated fats. Saturated fats contribute to high cholesterol, particularly total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. They clog your veins, etc., cause heart disease, stroke. So as a result of eating...
Sorry to do this, but are you able to change that? So if your arteries are getting clogged because of all the saturated fats that you've eaten, is it something like you were mentioning earlier with
Can be reversed, yeah.
The reversal?
Yeah.
Can you do? Is it about exercise? And I mean, because I always imagine like you want it almost like a drain cleaner, and not actually swallow a drain cleaner, but I'm saying that idea of having it clean everything out.
Sure. So as a result of excess consumption of saturated fats and increased levels of LDL cholesterol in our blood, we have the development of plaque in our arteries, etc., and the clogging of the arteries. So certainly that can be reversed to a large degree, depending on how far it's gone. If it's been like, sometimes that's the damage has gone so far, and the formation of plaque has sort of solidified itself so much that it can't be reversed, short of bypasses and inserting stents, etc.
Stents to keep that open.
Keep it open, yeah. So, but yeah, if you're not that far gone, absolutely eating more fiber to scrub. Fiber helps to scrub cholesterol from the body as well, and then also
I presume exercise,
and the consumption of more omega-3s in your diet and less saturated fats and less omega-6s can certainly reverse that. Yeah, so heart disease, stroke, and all those ailments that come with too much saturated fats in your diet and too much cholesterol. Those ailments can certainly be reduced by changing your diet. The other one thing, very importantly, that I must mention, omega-3s, polyunsaturated fats. There's the mother of the omega-3s is alpha-linolenic acid. We find that in flax seeds and linseed is flaxseed and hemp seeds. And anyway, that mother omega-3 fat, along with its siblings, DHA and EPA, which you find in fish.
I've seen that, yeah.
So what happens is, so how this works is a fish will eat the plankton and algae and whatever. Plankton and algae, being a plant, is high in linolenic acid. The fish metabolizes the linolenic acid into its metabolites called DHA and EPA. Then when we eat the fish...
Linolenic acid. It's nice. Yeah. It's fun to say. Linolenic.
Alpha-linolenic acid.
ALL. Try to say that. Linolenic. It's fun.
Easiest way is ALL. But when a fish then eats the ALL, alpha-linolenic acid from algae or plankton, it metabolizes it and it produces EPA and DHA, which it stores in its tissues. And when we eat the fish, we're eating the preformed EPA and DHA. If we go and eat the source, the vegetable, in other words, the plankton or the algae or the plant source, where linolenic is, we then have to convert it ourselves into EPA and DHA through metabolism. Our body can do, it's not as efficient as eating preformed EPA and DHA.
But is that why this like sea moss is making such a big...
algae,
people eating sea moss and algae.
Yeah, algae because they're high in. That's one of the reasons that they're high in omega-3s. Anyway, going back to EPA and DHA, particularly DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, polyunsaturated omega-3 fat. It forms a significant part of the structural components of your brain, number one, and then every cell membrane in your body. So two things. When we don't eat enough DHA or omega-3s in our diet, there's many modern day ailments like Alzheimer's and depression and all the mental issues, all the mental health issues. A lot of them can be related directly back to our bodies not having enough EPA in them to build a healthy brain. So we can take all the antidepressants in the world and go to all the best psychologists and psychiatrists, psychiatrists and whatever. If we don't have a healthy brain, we're not. Healthy mentality stems from having a structurally healthy brain.
But does this also affect things like libido? Because I know some people, this is the thing is that someone will watch this and they'll say, yes, Mario looks great, good for him, he doesn't drink, he eats well, blah, 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 but why must I change my way? Do you tell someone, oh, by the way, so you know, erectile dysfunction has been directly linked to this. Then all of a sudden someone wakes up and says, maybe I should change my way. Is our sexual health at all affected by what you're talking about now?
Absolutely, because sexual health relates directly back to emotions. and your mentality controls your emotions, and your mentality is controlled by your brain. Your brain is structurally composed predominantly of phospholipids and essential fatty acids. So get the mix wrong, and the whole chemical hormonal cascade in the brain goes wrong. So your sex hormone production is out of sync. The hormones that control our thought patterns and our emotions are out of sync, and we try and correct them with some medication and get a temporary quick fix, but it doesn't really work. So we need a healthy brain, and omega-3s are amongst the most important nutrients we could ever eat for a healthy brain. A healthy brain keeps us mentally astute, wards off Alzheimer's disease, keeps our emotions in check, makes us happier people. But when when our brain is now made up of the wrong fats, because we're not eating enough. So when we don't eat the right fats, we're not giving our bodies the right bricks. The body doesn't say, okay, well, I'm not going to build a brain. The body still has to build your brain cells every day. Those that are diet has to regenerate, but it regenerates it out of shit bricks. So now you have a shit brain generating shit thoughts and hormones and etc. So
shit
absolutely.
Life.
The most important thing, though, that I want to get back to, cancer is possibly, along with heart disease, possibly the biggest modern day killer. And we're all talking about, maybe it's the vaccine. And I'm not saying it's not the vaccine. I'm anti-vaccine, but we're blaming all sorts of things. But I'm telling you now, one of the main causes of cancers nowadays is the consumption of the wrong fats in our diet. And when we don't have enough polyunsaturated, particularly omega-3s, what I said to you is they give shape and structure. So the cell membranes, every single cell in our body has a cell membrane around it. That cell membrane has got what we call selective permeability. So it allows certain things in through. And toxins, it keeps it out. Because within the cell is our genetic material, our DNA. So we can't have a carcinogenic toxic ingredient getting through the wall because once it's in the cytoplasm and it gets to the nucleus, we get disruption of our DNA, and then the DNA generates and mutates, and then we get cancerous cells forming, and then they just mutate. They just continue dividing and replicating. So the cell membrane is the most important thing protecting the internal DNA, our internal genetic material from invasion by carcinogenic toxins. Now that structural membrane the membrane is controlled by the shapes of the fats. So in other words, think of it as a lock and key mechanism. So our cell membranes, to allow certain keys to fit and other keys not to fit, the cell membranes have to have a lock and key mechanism and structural shape to them. If the cell membrane is just like, okay, the hole is like that, so
anything, let everything in.
Everything can get in. So it's an open door. So if we start making cell membranes out of the wrong fats, we lose the selective permeability of the cell membrane, and now what happens is toxins that should never have got into our cells are getting into our cells and causing disruption to our DNA, which then ultimately results in cancerous cells forming. So,
like, I can tell you this much: I don't think this is going to be the last time we see you at this table, because the more I speak to you, the more I realize there's so much more, and you're really good at explaining it, because these are all terms we've heard or seen but don't understand. There's one more thing I just want to ask you before I let you go for today, okay? When the whole COVID palaver was happening, I was on air still, and I remember there was a virologist.
And I used to bite my tongue every morning, wanting to swear at
me
you.
too.
At you and,
I hated it.
You and I won't mention.
Yes. No, but this is the thing is we were on opposite sides.
100%, yeah.
And I remember that we had a virologist, whatever, on air, and I said on live, surely though, if we maintain a better pH, so we keep we stay out of the acidic side, then we in essence will remain healthy. And he tuned me. It's like, that's a very irresponsible thing to say, to make people think that the way you eat can affect your pH. And then I was shot down.
And I used to drive to school every day listening to this and think, how do I climb through this radio and get into that studio to factually correct them? And then secondly, I couldn't tolerate the stress anymore, so I would change to KFM and listen to
Darren, other Darren.
Yeah.
Other Darren.
Yeah. So
can we affect our pH, how we eat? Is that a real thing? Well, that was completely off.
No,
and if you stay out of the acidic side, so I don't want to say basic, but like if you are
slightly
pH balanced or slightly...
Yeah. You ward off disease far more effectively, significantly far more effectively. Our immune system is so much stronger. And one of the other ailments other than eating too much sugar and too much not enough fiber and too much saturated fats and too much omega-6s and not enough omega-3s and blah, blah, I can carry on. One of the big things is that our modern day diets are too acidic. When I say acidic, doesn't mean you put something in your mouth and it tastes acidic. Citrus fruit is acidic, but it's alkalized. It has an alkalizing effect in the body. So certainly our bodies should be pH, depending on the tissue, between pH 6.8, 6.9, 7 to 7.4. So we tend to be on the slightly basic side, our blood, our muscles, etc. And when the average Western diet brings our pH down to maybe 6.4, whatever. So the average Westerner.
So the lower your pH, the more acidic. Correct.
Yeah. The average Westerner is walking around in an acidic state. And as a result, you are a lot more prone to, your immune system is a lot weaker, you're a lot more prone to disease, a lot more prone to inflammatory disease, all these kind of things. So absolutely, the choices of foods that we make impacts upon whether our blood pH and our muscle pH and our body fluids pH is alkali or acidic, and we want it to be neutral to alkali, slightly alkali, certainly not acidic. And 90% of people walking around on a Western diet are walking around in an acidic state.
But Mara, in this exact thing, and this virologist said to me, your body knows what it's doing, and it cannot and will not change the pH more than point this way or that way. Like, it doesn't matter what you eat, your body is going to convert it and create the correct pH for your body.
Correct. He's partly correct, but he's not telling the whole truth. So absolutely, when I now eat an acidic meal, when I say acidic, it acidifies my body and my pH and my blood drops from 7 to 6.7 or whatever. My body can't allow me to have acidic blood because I'll die. So it has to correct that. So it corrects it, but how does it correct it? It corrects it by releasing calcium ions from my bones, which then causes years down the line I have osteoporosis, as an example. So your body uses bicarbonates and calcium and phosphates to continually try and bring the pH back, but it's an ongoing battle. And
pulling from your calcium.
It's pulling from the calcium, and so there's all sorts of other detrimental effects that it's causing. Your body will adjust your pH back up again, but then you eat acidic food and it goes back. It's a continual fight. So it's absolutely not true that your body will try and keep it within a range, but you're going to be on the lower range of pH, which is not ideal for optimal health. You want to. It's no good me saying to you that, okay, pH. If your pH of your blood is 6, you're going to die. Your body will stop you from dying. It's going to hold it at 6.4. 6.4 is not ideal. Who wants to live at 6.4? He's right. It is controlling it within a pH range, but you're on the wrong end of the pH range. Same as testosterone as a male. It's no good saying, oh, you're fine. I'll do a blood test. Your testosterone is in the normal range. The normal range is so wide.
Yeah.
To feel my best, to recover the best, to be mentally acute, I want my testosterone to be in the normal range, certainly, but on the high end. I don't want it to be on the low end. Same as pH. So it's easy for him to say, but your body will control the pH within the normal range. That's fine, but you want to be within the normal range at the ideal part of the normal range, not in an acidic state.
I know that we're running out of time. Can you go to the shop, get those pH tests? And is that a real way to test your pH, or is that just testing your spit?
That will test your pH of your saliva, which is an indication to a degree. Saliva is meant to, so I mean, you get a basic idea, but that's not ideal. I think you would have to go for blood tests and whatever to really have but again, and that will change. You have a blood test now and go for a blood test tomorrow, depending on what you've been eating, it will fluctuate, you know what I'm saying? So ideally, we just need to be eating a diet that's contributing to a more alkalizing effect in the body, and that's a lot more fruit, a lot more green leafy vegetables, and your protein sources ideally from leaner protein sources. Chicken, whey protein, interestingly enough, is an alkalizing protein source. Whilst dairy is generally an acidifying protein source, yogurt on the other hand is alkalizing. So yogurt. So it's not difficult for the average person to just Google and see alkalizing versus acidifying foods and get a chart, and then try and stick to those foods that are more on the alkalizing
That's
spectrum.
A good idea.
So it's very easy. I mean, you can go online and Google and say alkalizing versus acidifying foods, and you'll call it up and you'll see, okay, well, all these vegetables and these kind of meats are alkalizing and these are acidifying. And then try and stick, not completely. It doesn't, because red meat is acidifying, doesn't mean you mustn't eat red meat, but less in moderation. Yeah.
You are phenomenal, and I really hope that we will see you again sooner rather than later.
No, anytime. Please,
it's so amazing how you can just make us understand that. So thank you so much. I hope you have an alkalizing day.
Well, if the Proteas win tonight,
is there sports
against the West Indies, then my mood will certainly be contribute to being
go sports.
Yeah.
Well, Mara, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Pleasure, and you too. Thanks, Kerry.
Catch you next time. Bye. Thank you for watching the Well I Am podcast. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please like it, share it, and subscribe. If you have any comments, comment below. We will get back to each and every one of you. And if you would like to know more about us or you want to get some product, welliam.co.za.